And we ultimately wound up having to create our own bank with special rules from the government. And we went and we got approval to create Grameen Bank. Village Bank is the term, Grameen Bank. A bank that we could then service more of the poor. We then started to understand the kinds of things that make this system work. One of the things that amazed us is how well these people paid back their loan. And we started to realize that if we formed them into groups of 5 and peer pressure, the peer pressure itself was more valuable than the collateral that people normally loan banks. So one of the basic tenets of microcredit is to form small groups of 5. Rick, in the introduction, talked about that 97% of the loans go to women. Why do you think that is? Well, one of the things that we discovered was that the women are the caretakers of the family. They're concerned about the education of the kids. They're concerned about putting food on the table, whereas the men had more of a tendency to go out and spend the money and not utilize it in a way and not pay it back. So we now are loaning 97% of the money to women. We then started to look at, when we use the term getting out of poverty, what does that really mean? You've probably all heard that there is about 1 billion people in the world that live on less than $1 a day. There's another 1.5 billion, a total of 2.5 billion that live on less than $2 a day. And so those are the terms that have often been used relative to the definition of poverty. But we weren't satisfied with that. That didn't tell us anything about really getting out of poverty. And so we developed 10 criteria for getting out of poverty. They were things like you had to be able to feed your children, you had to have a roof over your head, you had to have a latrine, you had to be able to save some money. You needed to have your children going to school. There were 10 of these criteria that indeed we could all agree that if these things were to happen, we would say that we've helped lift these people out of poverty. So we continued to work with Grameen Bank, and we continued to loan sums of money. Typically, $100 is the initial loan. And the system is that the bankers, rather than we in other countries looking to go and beg to the bank, the bankers come to the poor. They come on their bicycles and drive into their villages. They form these small groups, these peer groups that create peer pressure and assure that the money is repaid. These bankers then continue to do this on a weekly basis. On a weekly basis, they go back into the villages and they meet with these 5 people. And in doing so, then, they see how things are going. And the money is repaid on a weekly basis. So typically, there's very small amounts of money paid back each week. And within a year, all of that money has been repaid. We then looked at and explored the difference between loaning money and donating money. And you've all heard the stories of you give a woman a fish and she eats for a day. You give her a fishing pole, she eats for a lifetime. And you loan her some money, create a business, and she feeds herself and her family for a lifetime. And so we recognized that we were on to something that was a hand up rather than a handout. It was something that took the self-worth of these people and lifted them. Women who were who were not of value in the society now became of great value. So we continued to work on this, and it then started to expand into other countries. The result is that over these years, going back to the 70s, in Bangladesh, Grameen Bank has now loaned out $7 billion. Yes, $7 billion to 6 million people, 97% of which are women. 99.2% of which is being paid back. Now, in the introduction, Rick pointed out that I had the good fortune, collectively with the Grameen Bank, of receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. You may wonder, why would someone who's an economist that's working on poverty receive the Nobel Peace Prize? And the answer is that unless we are able to bring people out of poverty, we'll never have it. You may also be interested in knowing that when we went to Oslo, Norway to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, we took our full board of directors, 12 people, 9 of which are women who borrowed money from the Grameen Bank and later became a part of the board of directors. You may also be interested to know that 95% of the funding of Grameen Bank now is from those who borrowed the money and have now invested it back in the bank. They're collecting interest. And the owners of Grameen Bank, it's 95% are the borrowers from Grameen, and 5% of the bank is still owned by the government. So I have the privilege of traveling the world. The Nobel Peace Prize was very helpful in allowing me the opportunity to do that. And in doing that, then, we look at expanding that. The program is now in over 100 countries. I had the privilege of speaking before your National Press Club. I had the wonderful opportunity to speak before while receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. And it's an honor for me to be a part of truly making a difference. When I look at what can be done, there is so much more that can be done in alleviating peace. And each of us has a vision. And my vision is that someday we're going to have in each one of our countries a museum. And in that museum, we are going to have information on what poverty used to look like. And I have a vision that the first one will be in Bangladesh, the country that was the poorest of the poor, that has now moved significantly into alleviating poverty. And my dream is right here in the United States, in Washington, D.C., that we will have on the Mall a museum for what poverty is like. It's been a privilege sharing a little bit of the story. Thank you again for having me here, and I look forward to coming back again.